We're going to get an update from Cliven Bundy. We hadn't had him on in a few months since that crisis built up and then faded away. Shadows and a portend of what's obviously coming in the future. Why did that end differently than places like Ferguson, where he ended up having 2 additional shooting deaths by the police that in both cases appeared to be people threatening to assault them? Why did that not go haywire in this case as the feds expand their land grabbing? So he'll pop in for 30 minutes at the bottom of the next hour. We're going to have a ton of other news to cover, obviously. We're going to talk about existential envy, which the globalists use, and class envy to manipulate. Max Scheler, the philosopher and proto-psychologist, exposed that, and I absolutely agree with his theorem on it to understand how advertising, how establishment advertising works. So we're going to look at some of the mind control today as well. Obviously, in big news, the IMF chief has been charged with negligence over graft case. Boy, that is just classic. And it begins. The Council on Foreign Relations is calling for the mega banks, the private Federal Reserve, to issue cash directly to the American people, training us to love our new government that's been our government since 1913. They're just coming out in the open now. That's coming to us from the Council on Foreign Relations.org and Zero Hedge, all up on Infowars.com. And this is done so that when they start, quote, taking people's private pensions and bank accounts to collectivize them, to protect them, that's in quotes, this has been the model in third world countries and now Europe, that the giant mass of people that actually get a little piece of it, who actually get a check from the private Federal Reserve, will then say, oh yeah, take over the economy. Well, they're the folks a few years ago that sent us checks. They'll send you fiat checks that accelerate the devaluation of earning power. They've already given themselves literally hundreds of trillions of U.S. dollars, which is devalued currencies worldwide, not just ours. Now that those chickens are about to come home, they're looking at flooring the pedal with dollar devaluation and then blaming it on the bail-ins to the American people before the total bail-in guillotine economic takeover.
I'm Darren McBreen, and these are some of the new items that are available now at InfoWarsShop.com.
Alert the public to Obama's blatant abuse of power with the new Obama t-shirt. Obama's Joker face on the front and come and take it on the back. It's time to publicly call him out for what he is, a tyrant. Defend the Second Amendment with our top seller Come and Take It t-shirts. And look at that, women's cut tank tops and t-shirts now available. Nice hat. Plus the Don't Tread on Me flag. And now you can become a micro distributor of the InfoWars magazine. Plus, get your own copy delivered right to your door each and every month. And if you're tired like I am of you and your family being exposed to polluted drinking water, get the Pro One high performance water filter. It gets rid of all pathogenic bacteria, cyst, fluoride, heavy metals, and numerous other contaminants.
So join the revolution at InfoWarsShop.com.
Then we'll continue with calls into the middle of the next hour. Cliven Bundy from the whole Bundy Ranch standoff. That's been over for a couple months. But is it really over? We're going to get an update with some new revelations and look at the larger unrest in the country. Why did this end up being peaceful versus Ferguson with the deaths and injuries up there? All that and more is coming up today. Let's first begin with just some of the headlines here that I'm going to read through. Peace president plots war on Syria. The Obama administration is reportedly preparing to begin airstrikes on Syrian territory without the consent of the Syrian government, claiming they need to take out the IS al-Qaeda forces that were funded by NATO and our own government in the last 4 years to topple Assad. The same al-Qaeda forces that got caught, according to even Turkish and British news, we first broke it, of course, at Infowars.com, launching fake chemical attacks, was real chemicals, but faking it and saying Assad had done it. It was pretty obvious whenever Obama came out, about a year before, 2 years ago, and said, if any chemical weapons get used, we're going to bomb the government and take over for the rebels. And so then 3 times the rebels fired chemical weapons, traced back even by the UN weapons inspectors to Saudi Arabian chemicals. And this is in the BBC. This is in the Turkish daily papers. This came out, and the whole thing got shut down. So now they're back wanting to bomb Syria and having U.S. aircraft fly over with the cover of the American people wanting ISIS, who's killed 300,000 plus people, mainly Christians in Syria, dealt with. But who gave them bases in eastern or in western Iraq to go into eastern Syria? NATO, the globalist, Obama. That's a fact. This is a real test to the American people and the people of the West. Are we as politically ignorant and politically illiterate as the political ruling class thinks we are? Will they bomb the Syrian military that lets Christians and Jews and non-radical Muslims live in peace, and their government doesn't wear burqas and wear suits and ties, and women can go to college and not wear hoods on their heads? Will the liberal West keep trying to overthrow governments that are doing nothing to us, that are angelic compared to al-Qaeda? They're picking out the targets. They're getting ready to overthrow the Syrian government. You watch. Islamic State video indicates terror group has sophisticated drones. They've released videos showing their brigades marching and their drones going in so they can target Assad's forces and U.S. forces now in Iraq. Oh, and by the way, it's a real enemy. I mean, they're going to kill advisors. They're going to kill contractors. These people have killed U.S. troops before. They've bragged about it. When they took over Libya, they said, next stop Syria, then the United States. And now we're being told, brace for terror attacks in America with IS. Continuing. American man reportedly killed fighting for ISIS dies in Syria. One of 3 foreign fighters alleged and aligned with Islamic State forces killed in battle in Syria fighting Syrian forces. The truth is America passed the test. We've not been proven totally politically and geopolitically illiterate when our own military and our own political class to a great extent rejected openly becoming al-Qaeda's air force or IS's air force in Syria last year. Continuing, gold ends firmer on short covering, bargain hunting. Silver also slightly up as dollar devaluation news sends other commodities up as well. Coast Guard cutter fires warning shot at Iranian sailboat in brief altercation. No, it wasn't an Iranian boat off the U.S. coast. It was off the Iranian coast. Coast Guard's all the way over there. Coast Guard cutter fires warning shot at Iranian sailboat in brief altercation, claiming that they aimed some type of submachine gun at them. Going back to Syria, West unlikely to seek Assad's help against ISIS. Unlikely Western countries will collaborate with Assad to combat ISIS. That's really a sick joke. Now that the West is so upset that the public knows that they're running al-Qaeda, this is all a bunch of elaborate baloney. Bomb a Toyota truck, bomb an old piece of artillery. Never do I see troops running away. Never do I see al-Qaeda dead on the ground, flopping around, blood spraying out like you do on the other infrared videos. All I see are FLIR videos. All I see is staged events. They're not bombing ISIS, ladies and gentlemen. They put them there. They armed them. They work for Saudi Arabia. And as usual, Saudi Arabia reportedly attacks us on 9/11. We attack Iraq. Al-Qaeda's attacking Syria. We attack Syria. Because Saudi Arabia is puppeteering this country to a great extent. It is disgusting. All right, so there's that stack of news. I'm going to your calls in the next segment. Let me just continue moving right along here. Ferguson investigates. And it's an investigation out of fusion.net. How did America's police departments lose loads of military-issued weapons? Well, I'll tell you, they sold them out the back door for money. Just like most police departments, when they do gun buybacks, end up selling them out the back door. And there's all these articles. Here's another one out today, out of CBS News. Davis City Council tells police in California to have planned for getting rid of their MRAP military vehicle in the next 60 days. The public asked, why are you getting wheeled tanks and automatic weapons for us, which is an important question, but Congress is now investigating this. It's like blaming the TSA that's groping you when Congress passes laws to carry this out. Or it's like blaming the police when they're given the federal training. The feds are coming in to federalize police now after giving them this martial law training that turns the public against them. Then the feds will come in federalizing the police in the name of fixing the problem they basically created. It was like, oh, in Ferguson last week in Missouri, thank heaven Obama has sent Holder here. He'll fix it. Holder was clearly involved in the Oklahoma City cover-up of who was really involved. I've interviewed the Oklahoma City police officers that witnessed it as deputy head. He was deputy attorney general, now attorney general. Holder has been involved in Fast and Furious, everything else you can imagine, covering up all the trillions being looted in the last 7 years, covering up all the executive abuses, and accelerating the federalization of police at light speed. And now there's all these articles demonizing local police and all these national news stories showing police brutality and taser deaths after the federal grants paid for all of it, and the threat fusion centers and the military training and the uniforms and the doctrine and shifting away from crime fighting to revenue generating. That is all globalist doctrine. So they turn the police into their own tool, and then after the public turns against them, the feds come in as the saviors. So just be aware of the larger psyop. I'm not defending the militarization of police. I am the trailblazer on record for 19 years exposing the police state. I warned you of the COG, of the kill switches in the computers, of tracking and taxing you by the mile. I warned you of blood draws to get driver's license. That's now starting in D.C. last year. I warned you of everything because it was in government documents. I learned in 1998 of secret microphones being put in light poles from Chicago, Illinois to Austin, Texas. It's now mainstream news this year. CBS News, Associated Press. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't sit there around a black pot staring into it and reading tea leaves. This is all a technocracy takeover. I've read 5 Brzezinski books. He basically runs the show. As the Council on Foreign Relations admits, he and Henry Kissinger, the head of the National Security Council, General Jones, 5 years ago in 2009, openly told British newspapers that they get their orders from the Council on Foreign Relations and Henry Kissinger daily. Now, the Council on Foreign Relations leadership, their central board, the rest is influence peddling and her minions and camp followers. It's been expanded over 10,000 people now. But the top 100 or so, they decide when the satellite tracker box goes in your car. It's in there by law now. They decide when the banks start grabbing your private money. They decide. I mean, here it is today. Council on Foreign Relations calls for central banks to totally openly take over the government. I'm going to be covering that. Here's another one. DOT, Department of Transportation, proposes mandating cars, broadcast location, direction, and speed at all times. And guess what? 2 years ago, by global treaty and U.S. law, all cars now have it. Oh, and we told you they would do this. I'm a conspiracy theorist. It's now happening. It is a scientific, programmed, authoritarian takeover, and we can stop it. Tepid clapping greets unpopular Obama with his VA visit speech, his first since 2011. And there's more trouble for his lordship, the front man for collectivism. Jaw-dropping revelation. Justice Department confirms lost IRS emails are stored on backup drives. But, of course, those Blackberries and backup drives were destroyed as well. Oh, and it doesn't matter how many backups there are. They will be hunted down and destroyed, and then nothing will be done. And the IRS will come and arrest conservatives. Because it's freedom. It's not Nazi Germany. IRS ethics lawyer facing possible disbarment, accused of lying. That's out of the Washington Times. Meanwhile, many Detroit residents, as much as a third of them, can't pay their water bill, so the government had been giving them free water, which in areas like the Great Lakes area should be basically free. I mean, the water just comes right out of the ground. But no, you have to pay for the fluoride and stuff that gets added, and so tens of thousands of residents are having their water turned off today. which will just further implode the entire area. But that's where we see our civilization going under globalist program. Coming up, Governor Jerry Brown announces the collapse of California and the untimely end of the United States. So that's all coming up. Just a ton of news today. The IMF head has basically been indicted. Again, you're going to be taxed by the mile in your car and tracked everywhere you go. Oh, but the NSA is not spying on you. The government just had a 2 decades-long program globally in a global standardized corporate government by 2013 to have tracker boxes in all the cars' bellies that the car won't operate if you remove it. Think of the concerted, premeditated effort that from Australia to the United States in the last 5 years, smart meters have gone in on the sides of everybody's houses to track everything you're doing inside your house and to dial into all the other, quote, smart Trojan horse tech to track everything you do and use that data to corner economic markets and manipulate prices. See, a lot of folks say, well, I don't care if I'm getting spied on. So what? I have nothing to hide. Well, why don't you leave your doors open at night then? Why don't you not, close your blinds? Oh, you want privacy. Well, that means you're a criminal. Government's more secretive than ever, but all these corporations with government are moving towards establishing a private, corporate, global government where they're above the law, they're exempt from the regulations, they're exempt from the red tape, then they saddle you with it as a tool of political control. This is a short segment. I'm going to cover news and come back with your calls in the next. Since I mentioned this form of corporate global government, there is a story up on Infowars.com dealing with this, and let me just go to it now. It begins. Council on Foreign Relations proposes that central banks should hand customers cash directly. So they've already given themselves conservatively $200 trillion just since 2008 in the banker bailout. No, it was a lot more than $876 billion. That was the Federal Reserve open window. That was only one move. When you talk about SDRs and when you talk about free credit being given out to the big 6 central banks, it's over $200 trillion. The total of derivatives they've created, according to USA Today, 3 years ago, we haven't gotten new numbers since then from the General Accounting Office, is 1.5 quadrillion. That's 1,500 trillion. Over 100 times all the real wealth in the world. And that's what they've signed us onto. Americans have been signed on to over 70% of that debt they claim we owe. When you hear about 18 or 19 trillion in national debt, that's what they currently owe and what entitlements and real debts are. That's our real debt. And you could extend that out to 200 trillion if you look at the whole life of those entitlements and Social Security and the rest of it. So, but forget, that's off the table. Derivatives are what these bankers have created, and they've used that to buy up the world through fraud. Now they're about to drop the hammer and devalue, so they're going to start sending out, they're discussing checks from the Federal Reserve. Coming up, I want to look at existential envy, a psychological term developed by Max Schiller. We're also going to look at Governor Jerry Brown announces collapse of California and ultimately the U.S., That's really what he's doing. Pew survey, 1/3 of Mexicans want to move to America and get all the free stuff, which is their entitlement. They're entitled to that, according to Obama and the Democrats. 60% disapprove of their president. Let approve of their president, Obama. Again, coming up, we're going to get into the Department of Transportation proposes officially mandating cars, broadcast location, direction and speed, and, of course, taxing you by the mile. We're going to get into China to replace Google and Microsoft with homegrown OS, their own operating system. What do you think Google and Microsoft are? They're basically NSA operating systems. So China knows what it's doing, replacing one global tyranny with their own global tyranny. We also have another report here. Forget peak oil and peak credit. We are on the downslope of peak intelligence, and major studies show that. We're going to be breaking some of that down. And the social engineers have come out. The radical plan to phase out Earth's predatory species, not just domesticate humans to be docile for the super predator class, the globalist, but to make animals to where they can't be predators, like cheetahs and wolves, and then I guess watch them all starve to death, because I guess inherently predatory activity is evil. No, it's any predatory activity not carried out by the New World Order is evil. I guess when a gazelle eats grass, it's being predatory. So the only way to stop that is to kill all life on Earth. You know, if you want to get an Alex Jones quote, here's one that hit me the other day. And it's this: life gave birth to death. God gave birth to life. And life gave birth to death. Because there is no death if there's not life. Life is the full continuum, the full spectrum. And then death is only an aspect of life. You could say that life is the universe experiencing consciousness through a physical, third-dimensional manifestation. But I know this: the New World Order and their jumbo jets and their red carpets and Hollywood stars is not the end-all, be-all of this world. And unfortunately, most people never get to figure that out because they never attain entrance or entree into that. And so they're always imagining it as the fabled grass that is greener on the other side of the valley. And so they feel unfulfilled. And that is the essence of globalist programming. The essence of their conditioning and their manipulation. Alex Jones here to break down some exciting developments in the area of research concerning supplemental iodine. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. And I used some of the mainline iodine supplements and they upset my stomach and I had some issues with it. Until I discovered a product being developed by Dr. Group, who I was already interviewing as an expert on my radio show, and I began taking the product before he actually rolled it out. You now know it as Survival Shield, true nascent iodine that your body can really absorb. Then, about a year ago, he said, listen, if you think this is powerful, I'm going to come out with rare earth, deep earth crystals that are incredibly powerful that no one else has as a source for their iodine from between 7,000 and 12,000 feet, literally drilled out of the ground. You put it on a hot plate and it turns into the pure gas. No one else has 99.99% pure iodine. And the results that I personally have had have been life-changing. I was over 270 pounds. And with the iodine, exercise, and better diet, I have lost now more than 50 pounds total, and I'm continuing to lose the weight. I have more energy, my libido, all this crap came out of my skin. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. This is innovating. This is trailblazing. And the best part is it helps fund Infowars.com, the radio show, the TV show, the whole media operation promoting true libertarian ideas. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox special at InfoWarsLife.com.